This is our Sunday morning, once a month gathering. So many of us have gathered since the beginning of the pandemic to look at what we're doing with our lives in order to really be of benefit to others. And as is the custom for this particular time, we're reading a piece I wrote as war and genocides have been amping up all over the planet. And this piece is just very short. It's on our homepage, but it captures, I feel, the sort of commitment that we have made to cultivate sanity, great care, warmth, and also loving action in the world today. And it begins with a line from the Dhammapada. Hatred is never appeased by hatred. Upaya Zen Center's global community finds itself grieving the tragic loss of life in Ukraine, Gaza, Israel, and the 30 other wars and genocides raging on our planet at this moment. We stand upright and open as we call not only for a ceasefire, but a ceasing of war in our time. Our hearts cannot turn away from the truth of pervasive suffering, sorrow, and death as a result of war. And for this, we urge that this be a time of deep dialogue, reaching past differences, of recognizing that the terrible cost of war passes through generations. The impact of war on our earth is inestimable, and that we must realize our basic humanity and sanity for the sake of all at this time and those who are yet to be born. So this is a time when we explore what we mean by this term basic humanity. And it's a time for us to connect, to foster community, to affirm our vows, and to not turn away from the truth of suffering, and also the capacity for suffering to be transformed personally and also institutionally. I remember years ago, Thich Nhat Hanh said the coming Buddha is the Sangha. And so that is what we continue to foster here month after month. As we meet the anguish in the world, and also as we resource ourselves to work in the charnel grounds, as many of us do, as so many of you do. And to kind of cultivate a community of contemplative activists, people who are deeply grounded, people who see clearly, and who are ethically committed to transformative action in the world. So as is our way, I'd like to invite us to open the chat, if you would do that, Noah, if it's not open. And I'm going to ask us, first of all, just what bioregion or watershed you're from or in right now, and also what's alive in you right now, and really going to essence.
Please chat with everyone so everyone can see.
Thank you, Jerry. I'm grateful to be with you. I see hope, suffering and ease, the importance of community, Fear and hope, a lot of fear and hope threading through this. Yeah. I invite you to look at the chat. It's flying past me. And no, I don't have a mic, Noah.
Yeah, I'm sorry if people are, a lot of people are saying they can't hear well. My volume, it sounds pretty good to me if I just turn it up. So apologies if for some reason it's not coming through.
Uncomfortable but exciting. Sangha. Thank you, Susan. Despair, sadness. Daniel, love. The need to share our fear and hope. Community, community, moral courage. Yeah. Hope is all over this chat, and trepidation and fear. Yeah. Curiosity. Thank you, Faye.
Desidero pace.
And Robert says the potential and power of storytelling and the performing of art, performance arts. I so agree. And Marianne says, I feel energized and committed to do my part. Common humanity, grief, love. Stay with the practice, feeling settled in with the ancestors. And Liz says, an amazing time to be alive. And, I often say, I feel like I was born for this time. But someone, again, from Washington says, despondent. And taking a breath as we look individually at what's alive in you right now. Thank you, everybody, so much. Kozan, I wonder, before Tara leads a brief meditation, if you would say just a few words of greeting.
Thank you, Roshi. I hope people can hear me. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces and so many new faces. We're up at Prajna, which is our refuge up in the mountains. You can see the aspens behind me. And we're here with 20 residents, the practitioners at Upaya, who you may see in the morning or the afternoon if you join us for Zazen. And we spent the morning scrubbing the main cabin and sweeping and tending to our roommates, the mice who kind of live with us up here. And I want to bring into our gathering these mountains. What a teacher, mountains across this earth. And here we have Sheep's Head looking down at us, and we've been reading Dogen's Mountains and Rivers Sutra, where he tells us the mountains are walking. And if we understand the mountains walking, we understand our own walking. And this is maybe the feeling we have about the world today. It includes everything. So I'm so grateful to have Tara and Frank with us, these lives of deep practice and these courageous hearts. So thank you both. And I so look forward to sitting and practicing with you both today.
Thank you, Kozan. Tara.
There we go. I am really, really glad to be with you. I realize that part of my way of self-nourishing is to be in community of care. And so as just seeing some of your words, mostly looking, I took that time to look and see and feel us together. And just what came up for me was a real sense of inspiration of being together. That feels like right at the center of where the hope is. So a real bow to Roshi Joan and Paya and the whole community for the gathering and creating of this. And it's kind of in that spirit. If we can just take a few moments to arrive together, we're going to do a very short practice now and then a longer one in a little bit. So wherever you are, just to perhaps feel from the inside out anyway, any subtle adjustments you might want to make to how you're sitting. If you like to close your eyes, fine, or lower the gaze. And with that sense of letting the breath be a way of collecting, you might take a nice full in-breath. Hold for a moment, and then a long out-breath. Really sense the letting go with the out-breath. And again, inhaling deeply. Hold for a moment. And then a slow, smooth out breath, and sense a letting go, a releasing, a relaxing outward. And then again, inhaling deeply, filling the chest and the lungs. And then that soft releasing, letting go, letting go, letting go. So that as the breath now resumes in its natural rhythm, you might sense the quality of presence that's here. Just a little more here, awake. Perhaps if you scan your body a bit, you might ask what wants to let go right now more. If there's any habitual tightness or tension. So often the shoulders, if we just imagine that relaxing, ice to water, melting, water to gas. And the hands, those micro muscles in the hands, if we soften on purpose. And then just feel the hands from the inside. Noticing that the more we relax, the more we actually feel. And let the chest be open, the belly soft. You might let this next breath be received in a softening belly, this breath. And now this one. And again. So you can feel this life breath received, awakening in the whole torso. And if you widen the attention, feeling this whole body as a field of sensation. And letting life live through you. Being the presence that's aware of this inflow and outflow of breath. Aware of heat or cool, tightness or looseness. Aware and receptive to the sounds that move through. this tender awareness that everything's happening in. Sense the possibility with whatever arises in an energetic way of saying yes, yes to this life. And if there's anything difficult, noticing what happens when that yes comes with a real sense of kindness. Allowing that kind, open presence to widen and include all of us here. See if you can sense the field of awake awareness, of tenderness, the shared field. That includes all of us that are here and all beings. And sensing whatever is your deepest prayer in this moment for your own living body, heart, mind, and for this world. Mhm. Well, I appreciate getting to start this way. And as you're probably aware, our formal theme is bridging divides. I really think of it as kind of the sacred work of our lifetime. That's really like at the heart of the Bodhisattva path, this practice and path of disarming the heart. Because in the moments that we disarm the heart, the truth of our belonging becomes so apparent. And it needs us all, in the sense of having a kind of dedicated attention to it. I love Roshi Jones just described the contemplative activists that we are. And you wouldn't be here if you didn't sense the pain of separation. That's part of what our nervous systems just know about, the sense of the world's unraveling and fragile. We're fractured by so much fear right now. And we know it. It's fueling the authoritarian regimes everywhere, the demise of democracy. It's across the globe. And so much violence, so much violation of the earth, of other species. And we also can feel it in our personal lives, the atmosphere. I think so much, you probably do too, about the teens, because they're the canary in the mine, And I just read recently, this is a kind of research through 36 countries, that 80% of Gen Zers consider themselves lonely. I mean, that's just so sad. So most of you are probably familiar with the story of the Tower of Babel. And, as it goes, God destroyed the tower because humans have become so arrogant and egocentric and controlling, domineering. So it was God's punishment. And the way he punished humans was he gave all different languages so humans couldn't understand each other, couldn't collaborate. Rather, it's just a setup for conflict and violence. Different languages. I mean, just think of it, living in different narratives, different stories, siloed worlds. And here we are, these echo chambers that dehumanize those that are perceived on the other side. So someone sent me a cartoon yesterday, and you have a man on a couch and dog on one side, cat on the other, and they're both staring into their devices, their iPads. So the man's looking at the dog and he says, "No wonder you two can't get along. You only read news written by dogs, and he only reads news written by cats." And I just thought that was just so perfect, the way we're caught in our storylines, our narratives that then make us forget our belonging to those with different races or religions or politics, our belonging with non-human animals living earth, our belonging to the life, the spirit that lives through us all. So dividedness always shows up in our close circle of relationships. And what I want to do is talk about disarming, because it's really the path that is so necessary for our planet, but really focus on what that means for each of us, because each of us can impact the atmosphere that we're all breathing, and we each can bring in more love. But what I've realized in my own life some years back is it takes a real dedicated practice. Like, I can't just assume it. It's because the arming, the judging, the blaming, the resenting, such a deep conditioning. Do you know what I mean? Just looking around. Yeah, okay. Little story for you. A girl's talking to her mom and says, "How does the human race appear?" The mother answers, "Well, God made Adam and Eve, and they had children, and all mankind was made." So 2 days later, she brings the same question to her father, and he says, "Well, many years ago, there were monkeys from which the human race evolved." She's confused. She goes back to her mother and says, "Well, how is it possible? You said the human race was created by God, and Dad said from monkeys." And the mother answers, "Well, dear, it's very, very simple. I told you about my side of the family, and your dad told you about his." I always love that. We really feel sides and that we're on the right side on some level. And if we look honestly at our relationships, and I'm going to invite you to pick one relationship where you're aware there's some divide, where you care about the person, but it's just you've locked into a divide. So that's just to put in the background so you can think about that. But if we look, family, friends, and see how we arm our heart with judgment, with blame, with resentments, and then we get habituated to it. We almost get resigned to the divides. It's kind of like we're living in this trance of separation, and it can last days, but often it lasts decades. And we're just not inhabiting the loving we're capable of. And I share this because this is how I often think to myself. It's like, if I am not disarming my heart here, if I'm just letting the blame and the anger or the resentments carry on, if I'm in that illusion of my side, your side, how are we going to ever be part of the loving awakening movement that can transform our world? How? And we have to pay attention close in. I often think of Ram Dass when he talked about how all his life he and his father were at odds. They both were convinced the other should be different. Just note the word "should be different." I mean, many of us have that sense. And so near his death, that dropped away. And they accepted each other and they became friends, real friends. And we don't have to wait to the end of life to get more intentional. So sometimes the process of disarming is really long, slow work. It has to do with deep, deep transgressions. Sometimes it's the ongoing resentment that's coming from a sense of you're not doing your share. You're not holding up your end of the bargain. You're letting me down in this way. You left a mess in the kitchen again, you know. But I want to name one really big one in current times that I think all of us know about, which is the divide that comes when somebody disagrees with us. Yeah? Wow. I mean, just whether it's family, friends, communities, the distance that comes when we have different views, whether it's on the elections where we are, politics where we are, Israel, Palestine. There's a saying that the world is divided into those who think they're right. And that's the whole saying, you know. So one of the stories I've always loved is of this Taoist master sitting naked in his mountain cabin. He's meditating, and a group of Confucianists enter the door of his hut. They've hiked up to give him a lecture on the rules of proper conduct, and they see the sage sitting naked before them. They're shocked. They said, "What are you doing sitting in your hut without any pants on?" And the sage replies, "This entire universe is my hut. This little hut is my pants. What are you fellows doing inside my pants?" So you'll have to forgive me a bit, but it's like we have to hold it in some way lightly because it's part of our evolutionary design. It's not a mistake. It's the architecture of our brain that has us feeling separate, that has us feeling fear, that has us then perceiving others that are different as in some way dangerous and bad. And as soon as we have made another into bad, we can hurt them. They're less real to us. That's a really important thing, is to be very forgiving towards the conditioning, but also to know, and this is the essence of the Bodhisattva path, which is what our potential is that we have this capacity of mindful awareness to see this is going on and to see it hurts. That when we're judging, we don't feel good. We're not inhabiting the wholeness of our heart and mind. It hurts. And we also have this capacity to care, to feel compassion. There's a whole relational network in the brain that's designed to have us sense our shared belonging. So this is really what we're talking about, is that it's part of our design to enlarge our sense of who we are, to shift from self-other to we, to a larger belonging of real beingness. And when we do, and you wouldn't be here if you didn't have a very deep taste of the beauty of it and the truthfulness of that larger belonging. It gives us a fearless heart. You know, if there's no self-other, there's nothing to tighten against or to be defending against. There's an amazing tenderness because everything's part of our heart, an amazing freedom. And sometimes we sense it as this inextricable interconnectedness. Sometimes it may just be that sense of pure oneness, but it's the same source of loving awareness that we all share. It's a shared field. So just to say that personal healing, planetary healing depends on evolving consciousness to know this wider identity, what one friend and writer describes as our echo identity. So the reality is, every day, most of us get caught in the trance of separation. You know, we go around in that idea of a cocoon of this is a self navigating and going somewhere and doing things, and often arming our hearts. So I think of Thich Nhat Hanh when he talks about war and peace. He writes that if we look deeply into the weapons, we see our own minds, our own prejudices, fear, and ignorance. Even if we transport all the bombs to the moon, the roots of war and the roots of bombs are still there in our hearts and minds. So we have this conditioning. So what we're going to look at is, how do we get intentional about deconditioning? How do we disarm? And in my own life, it first became really evident that I needed to in my 20s, because I was very involved with social activism. I was doing a lot of tenants' rights work and community organizing, going to rallies and so on. And there was a huge sense of us and them. The enemies were the landlords and the police and the conservative politicians. And we were very strident. It was very much of a us, them, and dehumanizing others. Remember the symbolizing police as pigs. It was everything we're talking about creating divides. And then on, I think it was Monday nights, I would go to my yoga and meditation class, and I'd get quiet and open. And I remember walking home from class one night. It was springtime, because I remember that I was smelling the blossoms, and I stood still. And I had that experience of being in the same time in the same place. My body was in the same time, the same place. And there was this open-heartedness that came with that, and a feeling of real connectedness. And with that, the sense of really caring about the suffering of everyone. It was big, because I realized that this was what we needed for transformation in the world. It wasn't going to come from hatred and anger. Hatred never ceases by hatred. It was going to come from this sense of we belong together, caring. So I stepped away for a while. I moved into an ashram, and I dedicated myself to spiritual practice and community. Was there for about 10 years. I remember when I re-entered activism, and I had a striking experience. It was, I think, the winter of 2003. The U.S. was gearing up to invade Iraq because supposedly there were weapons of mass destruction. And I was really upset about this invasion about to happen. And every time I'd listen to the news, I would feel this huge anger and aversion towards the political leaders that were driving it. I always felt judgmental. I was diminishing them. I was attributing basic badness to them. They're hawks. They're not human. You get the idea. And I realized, oh my gosh, this conditioning is still here. I'm part of creating the divides. So I began this active practice of disarming, where I'd read something or hear something that triggered me. Now I'm sharing the practice, and we're going to practice together. And I'd get in touch with what was there. I'd open to and acknowledge what was right there. Okay, anger. Anger and intelligence. You just don't want to be possessed by it. So anger, I'd open to it. And when I really opened to it, I could feel underneath it fear. So then I would open to the fear. I'm afraid we're going to attack. It's going to be causing so much suffering. There'll be so many ripples. Okay, fear. And when I opened to that, I felt a sense of grief. I was mourning the suffering. And I realized I have to feel this grief. I have to feel it, because embedded in the grief was caring. In other words, I went from the anger that creates divides to the caring that allows us to then act in a way that can help. And we can ask that question that Frank has brought to my attention that I love so much. What is love asking? We can ask that question. We can respond from our heart. So just to finish the story, soon, at those times that we had an interfaith rally on behalf of all the lives that were threatened. And it wasn't an angry rally. It was out of care for all. In fact, I remember children that had signs saying, "We care about the Iraqi children." So a bunch of us were arrested. I remember my clergy friends, wearing their garb, and the police making jokes about white-collar crime. But I guess what I'm really saying to you is that it's healthy to have anger, but just not to stop there. Because underneath anger and blame, wherever we're feeling it, there's something we care about deeply. And we need to touch both our grief and in that the caring. Then we can actually move to be contemplative activists that are making a difference. So let's now look, what I'd like to do is look at the challenge of disarming, because it's really hard. I mean, we do it much more quickly and naturally if it was easy, but it's actually easier to take a side. It's easier to get simplistic about bad and good, right and wrong. We don't like complexity. It's easier to judge and to hate than to disarm, because it requires just what Roshi Jones said, facing the suffering. We have to have the willingness to feel feelings, fear and grief included. I'll just share with you, I remember a journal on mediation, and there was, you saw Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, and the mediator was saying, "You're saying off with her head, but what I hear is, I feel neglected." So there is this story that I always remember of this wise sage, and people would come to her and bring their deepest suffering, their confusion, their conflict, their pain. And she'd say, "I only have one question to ask you. What is it you're unwilling to feel?" It's such a powerful question. If you're feeling stuck, just pose that to yourself. I think of James Baldwin, who said, "I imagine that one of the reasons that people cling to their hate and prejudice, to their judgments so stubbornly, is because they sense that once the hate is gone, they'll be forced to deal with their own pain." Okay, so here we are. It's the Bodhisattva path to not turn away from what's difficult. And it takes intentionality to override that flinch response that I don't want to go there. There was a movie a number of years ago, and I remember the line in it that really jumped out was that vengeance is a lazy form of grief. Vengeance is a lazy form of grief. So if I look at my own life, whenever I am having some charge, judgment, or anger, and typically it's towards those who have power and then oppress and violate, under it there's grief and there's caring. But I have to be willing to pause to get there. And sometimes I don't. But when I do, I'm always grateful, because it always feels like homecoming. Like when I start feeling real sadness, oh, okay, that I'm porous, I'm open, I'm here again. And it doesn't end there. I mean, that's part of opening to love and to joy and to wonder. So let me just step back and say that often when I talk about disarming and about letting go of bad othering, not putting down other people, cultivating an inclusive compassion, the main question I get is, well, if I'm compassionate towards someone who's causing harm, how will I protect myself? If somebody's being abusive, if somebody's hurting others, how will I stop the violence if I'm being compassionate? How will I relieve suffering? How will it protect against further attacks? And I'm sharing that with you. It may not be your way of thinking, but a lot of people really have a kind of a correlation between including everybody in our hearts means that we won't really protect against more harm, that in some way will distort the real inequities or the real scale of some people suffering at the hands of others. So what I want to say is that Roshi Joan has a phrase that I think is so powerful to meditate on and reflect on, that I suspect all of you are familiar with, or many are, which is that true compassion is expressed as both a strong back and a soft front. That the strong back is that clarity, that wise discernment that says, oh, this is unhealthy behavior. It's causing suffering. We need to take care. We need to protect. It's seeing truth. It's acting with that sword of Manjushri, that wisdom. The front is tender and open and caring. The front sees that those who are causing suffering are suffering. If somebody's bullying our child, we need the discernment to say, hey, this has to stop. But we also have to know that that bully was probably bullied and they're suffering. So that when we ask that question, what is love asking? We respond by trying to take care of both of them. Does that make sense? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let's look, I'm going to go stepwise, a practice that can help us if you want to really apply this concretely in your life. Releasing the armor of blame. And what we're doing is bringing mindfulness and compassion to where the blame lives. We'll use the RAIN acronym. I know some of you are familiar, some not. The acronym helps us to arouse mindfulness and compassion, and the letters are recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. So in this process of releasing blame, the first part of it is what I call the U-turn, where we're paying attention to what's going on inside us. Because we cannot disarm our hearts towards another if we don't honestly face the layers, fractals of feelings that are in us. So we bring compassion to what's inside us. And the second part is then we widen and look through more clear eyes at the other. So again, the first part is essential. I know so many people that have tried to forgive others or stop blaming others, but have not dealt with, they've bypassed the hurt inside them. For me to disarm when I was, thinking about my anger and aversion of those that I called hawks that were driving things towards a horrible war and huge suffering over these years, to disarm and still act, I had to first open to fear and grieving. I had to make the U-turn, okay? So we tend to our own hurt, blame, fear, and then we can widen our attention to another. And I'll share from my personal life. When my son, Narayan, was a teenager, I think it was junior year was when this really peaked. His entire priority, his deep commitment to life was socializing, role-playing video games, and getting high. That was it, the big three. And I spiraled into a chronic state of huge tightness, judgment, anger, blame. He should be different. I was really aversive. Even when we were involved with something that had nothing to do with that, I could feel that on some level I was holding stuff against him. And it hit me that he's going to leave home in a flash, really. And I don't want to be locked in this divide. Okay. So I remember really clearly that I realized I had to practice with this. And I first made the U-turn, and I found under the anger, I'd recognized and allowed the anger. And as I investigated under the anger, there was fear. Oh my God, he's going to have a bad life. There was shame. I failed him. It's my fault in some way. And there was hurt and grief at the distance that this was creating between us. So I needed to nurture and bring a lot of self-compassion to the pain of those feelings, to that vulnerability. But when I did, when I really held myself with kindness, and that's the nurture in RAIN, I had a wider view. I could see more clearly. I could see him in a larger perspective, that he had gone through a phase of feeling lonely and disconnected and not respected in his social life. And he was seeking ways to bond with others and seeking mastery. And I represented a very controlling, disrespectful energy. I could see that and I could inquire, what is love asking here? And love was asking for me to still set boundaries, but from a much more respectful, caring, open, authentic place. And he was less defensive. And we bridged. We bridged the divide. There was much more playfulness and intimacy and real conversation. Strong back, soft front. My identity widened. I was no longer in that ego identity that was clutching. So I want to name one other thing before we practice, which is that a key part of the Bodhisattva training, if we want to widen the lens and see the other more clearly, is learning to see vulnerability. We tend to look at the surface and look at how a person's misbehaving and not ask that deeper question of what's it like being you? What's it like being you? Seeing their unmet needs. I often think of this story of the metaphor, kind of an anecdote of persons walking in the woods and they see a dog by a tree and they go to pet it and it lurches at them with its fangs bared. And they go from being friendly to bad dog. But then they see that the dog's paw's in a trap and they shift again. And there's a concern. They might not get close. They might keep their boundaries because the dog's dangerous, but their heart is open and soft. They care. We need to see how someone's leg is in a trap. It's like that Black spiritual that says, see past the fault to the need. Our civil rights activist, Ruby Sales, puts it this way. She asks, and she's sometimes just doing it in her own heart, where does it hurt? Amazing question. So mostly we're talking about in our personal life, but I also want to say that, there are divides in our public life that if we get the knack of disarming personally, we can see how, oh my gosh, I'm dehumanizing another group. We can see that. So we'll practice, but I want to invite you as we do to sense how the same practice you could bring to places, because we're all conditioned to do this, where you might be devaluing another person because of their country or their race or their politics or extended. Okay, so let's practice together. If you need to kind of stretch a little bit, please do so, and then come into a sitting posture that'll support you. And as I mentioned before, bring to mind someone that you care about, but you're aware that you've been living with some distance, that there's some conflict or tension. You're not a full-blown antagonism, but some resentment or blame. And once you have that person in mind, just sense in a big way your heart's aspiration that as part of this path of awakening and freedom, that you want to disarm your heart. And know that it happens at its own pace, but you can have the intention. So bring to mind a particular incident that reminds you of how come you're holding the blame or the resentment. Maybe words exchanged, tone of voice. And just notice what comes up, because this is the time to make a U-turn and really tend to what's going on inside you. The R of rain is to recognize. So just to recognize what's most predominant. Honest recognition. Maybe anger, blame, judgment. You might mentally whisper whatever word goes with it, maybe more than one. It's fine. But with whatever's there, allow it. Let it be there. Just like waves in the ocean, it belongs. We wake up not by getting rid of anything, but by becoming larger and more tender and more clear. So just let it be there. And then begin to investigate with some curiosity. So what are you believing about yourself when this comes up, or about the other? Or about how the other relates to you? What are you believing? Just sense what's the worst part of this. What's most disturbing or hurtful, brings up reactivity. And sense where you feel the feelings most in your body. And you might experiment by letting your face express the feelings and your whole body expressing it. So you can just feel it and get in touch with it. Get in touch with where you feel most vulnerable and sense what is the real deepest feeling here. Fear, hurt, grief. What is it? You might just nurture by sensing what you most need to hear, what message might most bring you some healing. It might be trust your goodness, you belong, love is still here, love is always here. If it's hard to offer yourself a message, just send someone else that you trust offering it, or a spiritual figure. And you might put your hand on your heart, if you haven't done this before, very tenderly, because part of nurturing is really energetic, just offering care to the wounded place, letting in care. Let that be your intention, to let in care. So you can feel the quality of presence and heart growing. To sense who you are when there's compassion, presence with your inner life. So you can begin to witness, an intimate witness of the other. And take a moment to remind yourself of the other's behavior and see the other's emotions and reactions. Just sense them. Sense what's going on for that other person. And you might really ask with interest those questions. What's it like being you? Where does it hurt? How is your leg in a trap? And just see if you can notice where they're vulnerable, their unmet needs, perhaps for feeling respected or loved or important, safe. And just feel your heart offering care. You might even imagine the person feeling their needs met and how they might be different. Sensing who you are when your heart is disarmed, the heart space that includes yourself and the other. You might inquire, what is love asking? And imagine the different ways you might respond to this person when you next are with them. What is love asking? And to close the meditation, take some moments just to sense who you are when present and caring towards another. Just to rest in that natural, tender, undivided awareness.
Thank you so much. Frank, I would love for you for just a few moments to just reflect on what is present for you right now in the light of what Tara has just shared.
Well, the thing that's most present for me in the moment is, first of all, gratitude to my friend Tara for offering us a practice that isn't just hopeful, but aligns us, helps us attune with a solution to our division. Yeah, so that's the first thing that's here. And then, this morning, Roshi, I was thinking of our friend and teacher Bernie Glassman and how he put this emphasis on one body. One body, that each of us have one body, and yet that body includes many individual elements, and how we might think of the world as one body with many individual elements. And I guess I remember that Bernie would playfully point to his own body as a kind of example, and if I were to do that now, I'd think about how foolish it would be to imagine that I wouldn't send blood to my right hand because it shook hands with murderers, or that I wouldn't try and warm my left foot right now because I'm annoyed with it always being cold, or that I wouldn't want to look into my own heart because it sometimes scares me. And Bernie would say, how come we don't recognize that inability for us to see the world as one body as a kind of illness? Just as we might think of someone in the situation I was just describing as crazy, as ill, if I was regarding myself in that particular way. How come we don't see the world that way? Or how come we don't see our inability to see the world that way as a kind of illness, the illness of separation? So that's on my heart. And then the other thing that's here for me as I've been listening to Tara is the need for compassionate action as well. Not in addition to our ability to be with our own sense of separation, the ways that we contribute to suffering, to also act. And Roshi, that I spent time in refugee camps in southern Mexico working with Central American refugees, and I saw a lot of horrible things, and I saw a lot of unnecessary suffering and dying that was horrific and didn't need to happen. And so when I came back to the States, I filled with my fury, not unlike what Tara was describing, I, was angry and tried to take actions. And one day I remember listening to the radio, and I just started screaming at the radio. I just started screaming at it, and And then I noticed my son, who was about 2, 3, cowering in the corner. And I'd really frightened him. And I thought, oh, Frank, you got to stop the war. Not just the war in Central America. I had to do things to help stop that too, but I had to stop the war inside myself. Much in the way that Tara's been just guiding us. And I also had to take action. I had to use my contacts to go and speak with congressional aides to talk to them about our policy in Central America. And I had to speak to large groups of people and present the facts of what was going on. And I had to help Guatemalan families get across our border safely and find some safety and security here. All those things were necessary. All those things were necessary. And to recognize that I am complicit in those forms of suffering that exist in the world. That I'm complicit in it because I am not separate from them. And so I had to not only find ways of working with forgiveness, but I also had to turn toward myself and be really honest about how I was complicit. And so these are things that are on my heart and mind right now. And I feel tender as I speak to them because they're true. And because they're true, I don't want to turn away. I don't want to trade truth for comfort. So I'd like to also invite the people that are on this call to join in with us, and let's discover together. Let's have a dialogue together. Let's inquire in an open-ended way without being fixed on some particular outcome. And let's just see what's on your hearts and minds. How did this beautiful talk and guided practice that Tara guided us in, where did it land for you? How did it land? Yeah. So you know how to do this. You know how to raise your digital hand, and you don't have to have a question. It might be something you want to share, a comment you want to make, but we'll try to be brief so that as many people as possible can join in a dialogue. And so raise your hand, and then Noah or someone will call on you, and we can have a little brief exchange, okay? Which I hope will be a benefit to everyone, not just to the individuals in the dialogue. Yeah.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah. What's on your hearts and minds? Raise your little digital hand and let's see.
Jamie.
Jamie?
So powerful. With gratitude, we can all do this right now.
Anything else, Jamie, you want to add?
And with love, which is, we have all of the tools to make this situation and our lives and everyone else's lives better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Someone else wants to make a comment or ask a question of Tara?
Evelyn. I'll unmute you.
Thank you. First, namaste from the bottom of my heart to all of you. In listening to Tara's teaching, which I am familiar with on certain levels, what came up for me is, in practicing it, is the grief just seems unending. You have the expression of grief, and then you start to move to compassion, and then the next day you're back in the toilet again with the grief. And it just doesn't seem, I can't seem to get these days beyond the grief very well. So that's kind of my comment / question.
Just a question for you, Evelyn, because I'm really, really glad you named that, because I do think there can be a kind of a quicksand of getting buried. And I want to ask you, what do you do in your life that just to honor the beauty that's here and the goodness? What brings you joy? What brings you wonder?
Well, I'm sitting right now staring at my beautiful garden and listening to the fountain and hoping to hear some birds, but since I'm in LA, they don't seem to come here very much, and filled with gratitude always for everything. And still, when I allow myself, or it comes just of its own accord, the grief just continues to just engulf me. And then I have to, so it never seems, the level just doesn't seem to go down. Let's put it that way. It doesn't start to disappear. Let's just put it that way.
One of the things that, and again, I'm loving it, because I feel like there can be a sense of the endless ocean of sorrows. And so I know for myself, one thing is to really, I have to like actually nourish myself consciously, just as you were describing, with the birds in the sky and the gratitude. And really, there's a Mark Nepo poem that says, everything is beautiful and I'm so sad. I'm so sad and everything is beautiful. It's somehow or other, it's this heart's capacity, and it's part of the Bodhisattva path to have it all be there. And so I always take, if I'm sinking in something, it's just an invitation to widen out. The other thing to just wonder about with you is when there's grief, asking that question, what is it I'm really caring about right now? Because in the grief, embedded in grief, the grief is for what you love. And there's an idea that it's gone, but when you ask, you find something timeless that's actually very tender and very beautiful. So just to keep going deeper, in a sense, is the other part of it for me. Frank, I'd love to hear from you on this one.
I think you've said it so beautifully, Tara. I mean, I love that what you said about grief is only here because love was here. And, I don't know, but I'm somehow believe that there are monks and nuns and renunciants in caves in the Himalayas and elsewhere in the world that are somehow keeping the earth on its axis, from spinning off its axis, rather. And to me, I think a lot of that is an act of love, that our practice is an act of love. If love isn't part of our practice, we're doing it for the wrong reasons. And so I think, for me, it's so central that what you're saying, that what will keep me from getting lost in my grief or muddled in other things is simply asking, what else is here? And what else, and what do I love? Yeah, beautiful. Okay, Roshi, who's up?
Well, I'm just taking a big breath. Yeah. And just remembering a line, I think it's from a song. One of my good friends shared it with me, and it goes as follows. Grief is love that has nowhere to go.
I don't know about that. You and I have talked about that before, but I think actually there is a place for our love to go. And I think it's really important that we recognize that, and that, yes, there's a way it can be sort of amorphous, but it's also action. Love in action is a way that we heal the divide, that we actively choose. And it doesn't always have to be on the quandary that we're facing in that moment. One of the ways that I worked with the suffering I saw in Guatemala and in Central America and Mexico was I came back to the States and the AIDS epidemic was just exploding. And 20,000 people died in San Francisco. And so I turned toward that suffering and I began to care for the people that I knew and loved. And then that grew into loving more people. And so Martha's site and then and others started the Zen Hospice Project as a way of expressing that love in the world. And so for me, it's really important that, our grief, which is connected to that love, helps us sometimes move into action. Yeah.
And I so agree with that. But there is also the experience before the action.
Yes, of course.
Of being saturated in the grief.
Yes.
And not fixing it so quickly.
Yeah.
But that realization that grief really is rooted in love.
Yeah.
And I know that from my own experience of loss, that if I move in a way too quickly into action, into projects, and I'm a project person, but I don't rest in that pause where the brokenness is, I miss something.
Yeah.
And it is that experience of boundless love, which is allowing me to grieve.
Yes.
So we agree, but differently.
Yeah. One body, lots of different elements. One world, lots of different elements.
Yeah.
Thank you for that addition. Yeah. Who's up?
I see Sherilyn.
Oops. Okay. Hi. Thank you. Thank you for this gathering. It's powerful. So I have just a sharing. I am a person of action, and an action that I took recently was here in the middle of the Midwest on Pride Day, walking around giving mom hugs, and a mile of mom hugs took about 3 hours, and it was incredible. And I feel grief for what's happening to our brothers and sisters around the world when it comes to this trying to take away rights for loving who we love. But the question I have, it's Tara, you said something about forgiving our conditioning, and it's not, that was a new concept for me. I had not considered sitting with forgiving my conditioning, and I feel like I have spent a lot of time running away from my conditioning and working on myself, but maybe there's more I need to be doing, but I'm not sure what to do with that, forgiving my conditioning. I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions there.
Well, first of all, to me, it's profound because we take it so personally. It's like every one of us has a nervous system. We got a limbic system. Every one of us, given the right conditions, will aggress, will create bad others, will dehumanize, will demonize. I mean, we all have that conditioning. So if there's a place in me that can say, this isn't personal, this is just part of the way we're designed, and we also have the capacity to notice it. And if we can notice it without judging, i.e. allowing it, being tender towards it, because it hurts. In fact, I say to myself, ouch, it hurts. It's like, but if I add on, I'm bad for it, then I'm identified with it and I'm stuck with it. But if I say, ouch, this hurts, and then I feel tenderness for all of us, and knowing that each of us can be part of noticing, being kind, and waking up through it, that's where the hope is. So I'm really appreciating that you highlighted that one, because it slips by and it's unconscious, but it keeps us stuck. Yeah, so really a bow.
Thank you. And it's opening a door for me to begin to ask myself, what is my conditioning, and be open to that. So thank you so much. Really appreciate.
Thank you. Thank you both. Linda. Welcome, Linda.
Am I unmuted? Oh,
You
good.
are. You are.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Tara and Frank and Roshi Joan. And what Stacy just said was along the same route of my. So I work on myself. My leg, the trap my leg is caught in when I'm angry and blaming is, childhood trauma, domestic violence, and quote unquote worked on that for years, but then it just all came flooding back. 2016 election, the increased violence in the world. So this is so helpful. And another thing I just want to add that helps is when I practice is Thich Nhat Hanh's reminder that it's helped me. When I am doing this practice, I'm doing this for the people who hurt me. I'm doing it for the family and all the generations that I can't even imagine where all of our karma came from. I know it's rooted in a very deeply white supremacist South, and it helps me open my heart as other practices are here. So I just want to appreciate what we're doing here. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I just want to make one comment on that because you brought to my attention one of the things that I think we forget a lot, which is we talk about disarming and how we all can do it and we can do it for the sake of others. And it's so true. And some of us can't do it. And sometimes the trauma is so great that we can't disarm. I've been teaching a lot, groups of Palestinians. I've been teaching with Israelis, some very large, inclusive hearts, and some people, the trauma is so raw that the only step at this moment is to just keep holding it and be in good company and not think we should be able to disarm. So I just want to disarm us of that notion of should and know that what we can do is care about it. We can know we want to inhabit love, and out of love, know we have to be patient. So you reminded me of that, and I'm really grateful that I got a chance to name that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Oh, Boogs, Boggs, they, where are you?
Hi, I'm calling in from London. What came up for me in the practice, by the way, very grateful for all three of you here. Thank you and for this space. What came up for me is, as usual in that practice, was fear. That I filter most of my experience through fear. And again, what's already been mentioned, childhood trauma of abandonment. And the fear of my feelings. Yet every time I do such practices, the rain practice, it reminds me that there's a fear of fear and a fear of the process. But when I'm actually feeling the loss, the abandonment, when I'm able to and I don't become overwhelmed, there is a healing. And to answer the question, what does love want of me, or what is hurting? It's the inner child. It just wants to be heard. I don't even have to. There is no trying to fix it or just to honor it, honor my process, and just witness it really. So practices like this resource me, and I'm able sometimes by myself, but I also need, because I had no family structure, and I had an attachment disorder, so I was very difficult with attachment. But what I found is I followed my nose with Dharma practice and a lot of Jungian psychoanalysis. And I found myself in a place where I've allowed myself or been curious about community and recognizing that, we're all on that spectrum, and the depth of the three people here, the depth practitioners here, have been very meaningful. Joan, Tara, and Frank. I know you're not perfect, not projecting on you, but you have a depth of practice and an authenticity that just alters my context and helps me to see a different perspective rather than get overwhelmed and cynical and detached. So I'm more than grateful for this space, because I was feeling very stuck again, and but I remembered, now it's time for Sangha. And so I'm very grateful for this space. So just trying to be with and let it evolve, and then hopefully make a difference, find my purpose more. Mindfulness of death, the contemplative practices I'm there for Frank and Joe and their book, I found them absolutely acts of transcendental compassion that have focused my practice and my life. Thank you for that too. Bless you.
Thank you so much. You know, really, you mentioning community, and I think Frank and Tara and I are so aligned, and Kozan, in this regard, that it's about connection. I mean, there is no life without each other. And so thank you for bringing this again into the foreground. I'm going to invite, we have time to hear one more person in reflections before our gathering is complete for the day, never complete. I see our old friend, Mary. Let me unmute you. There you are. Nice to see you, Mary.
So wonderful to see you and Frank and Tara, because you three are key people who have deeply affected my life and brought me to places where I didn't know I could go, and have helped me flip my script so many times. And I'm still at it. I just wanted to say a couple things that came up while, Tara, you were going through your kind of the deepening into how we're feeling. And what came up for me was, in addition to like the fear and the hurt and all, it was also just that simple kind of thing that I recognize in myself over and over again, is I want things to be different. And as you were talking, I was going through again how many times I've used your work to like deal with one of my sisters, and how it just keeps coming up. And the other day I was with them at a dinner, and we just see things so differently. And I was sitting there wanting things to be different. So as I went through what you were saying, I was just thinking, gosh, one of the sadnesses I have is all the joy we miss, and not being able to connect as a family the way I'd like it to, you know? And we could be having so much fun right now, but there's so much tension, and there's so much sort of fear of each other, and we don't agree politically or financially, and like actually probably we do at some core level. We had the same parents, but we put on these all these shoulds that we're covering ourselves with. And so I just wanted to say thank you for helping me go deeper to understand and have compassion for my sister, because there's no way we're going to heal. And I love her kids, and I don't get to see them as much as I'd like. And I want to be the aunt that is there for them. And I don't want to not have access. And one other thing, just to follow up on the idea of community, as you were talking about that, you know, Frank, you're saying the illness of thinking that we're alone. I joined this community for today because I need you so much. I need all of you. I need to see all the faces that show up. I need all of you teachers to keep me going. And so I keep asking myself, well, what am I going to do? What kind of community can I create? Not just for me, but because when I remember that other people are needing this too, it's like, oh yeah, come on, let's do. It makes me, you know, grow a pair. I want to put myself out there and say, I'm not doing this because of me. I want to create something for all of us. Mm-hmm. What little step can I take? And I want to ask that of my friends as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
May it be so. May it be so.
Really. So just a few words from you, Tara, and from you, Frank, and then we'll be in that completion. I thank you both. This has just been medicine for me personally this morning to be with you both. Tara.
Well, maybe I'd like to do a reading if that's okay, because this is a prayer that I love. It's an indigenous reading. I heard it at a vigil. There will be a day, and the children of all genders, colors, and faith will follow the path of heart. They will speak the language of the earth and understand the language of heaven. They will live as a part of the great circle of life, and then peace will come. There will be a day, and the children of all genders and colors and faiths will follow the path of heart, and their hearts will walk in trust. They will sanctify all form of living beings and plants. Together they will pray, connected to the source of life, and then peace will come.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me, and blessings. As others have said, it's an amazing gift to be with others that care and feel that that caring is really what will carry us forward. So thank you.
Oh, stop the war. Stop the war. Not just the wars, the 30, 40 wars that are going on in the world right now, but the war, any war that we have going on in ourselves, any part of ourselves that we want to leave behind. No part left out. That's really what I want to practice with. No part left out. And that's how we stop the internal war, and that's how it spreads and is shared with the whole world. Yeah. So may that be so for each of us. May we learn to stop the war in ourselves. Roshi, I think you're muted there. No, we're still not hearing you.
Now
There we are. There you are.
So this monthly gathering is just so important for many of us. This kind of touching in the medicine, renewing our vows, and also learning from each other, and also from you, Frank, from you, Tara. And I just thank you both so much. I know how many threads you're weaving on the loom of your life. And I'm just grateful that this thread is something that you allow to enter our lives in the way that you do. And we're going to come together again on August 18th with our beloved Kathy Fisher, who's going to be talking. She has Messages in a Bottle, carried by the currents, and talking about early Buddhist women and their courage and their extraordinary radiance, kind of deep in the roots of our practice. And also in those roots are the paramitas and the first of generosity. So I just urge you to give as generously as possible so if we can support Tara and Frank, and also that Upaya keeps on with this world of the virtual community. So thank you for your practice. And I want to just say the words of Shanti Deva: for as long as space remains and as long as beings remain, may I too remain, to end the sorrows in this world.